Alright, welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we're going to look at how to create these landscapes that you can move through. And we're going to look at two different versions of this, but they're going to be both kind of based on the same technique. And so this one is kind of in this synthwave 80s Outrun style. And the other one is going to be more like this abstract landscape that we're just kind of moving through without this weird sun there in the background. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we're actually going to do before we dive into it. It's going to be a bit of a longer tutorial. There's quite a lot of things you can do with this as well. Alright, so technically, or basically what we're just doing here is that we're using a displacement map and we're animating that displacement map, which is a noise in this case, so it just seems like we're moving through that. And then with tops, we're just adding like the sun there and like this moving starry sky there. So there's one little problem here with this technique, and that is that if you look closely here, or if I just turn this off, no, actually make this bigger. If you look closely here, you can see this grid isn't actually moving. So if you look in like somewhere there, if you look there, it seems like we're moving through this, but the grid that we're on isn't actually moving. So I hope that's not a problem. It kind of bothers me. There is a way to kind of go around that by probably, if you know shaders, then you can probably somehow change that. Or also thing is you can just use a different color map and kind of, because we're using like this wireframe on the phone for this. You can also just put a different color map with a grid on it on here, but it just like I've tried that, it really just doesn't look good. So if you're really bothered by this, then you can try to find a different way. I think it also works nicely like this. Also, I'm going to show you how you can make this look even more retro with one simple trick. Just kind of, tuning down the resolution. So if you do that, you can kind of see this really looks like this vintage kind of computer graphics, like that. All right, so let's dive into this. Let's have some fun. And we're going to start with a grid, like a grid stop. And let's change this orientation to ZX. And let's change the rows and columns to 200 for now. So we have this nice grid there. I'm going to turn the viewer off because we just need the position data, or like the base data. We don't really need to see that. It's just going to take computing power away. I'm going to also add a transform and change the scale to 20. It's going to be a big grid. And I'm also going to add an attribute create here, which I'm going to use in a second. And let's add this chain to a geo. And also turn the viewer off for this. We're going to need a camera as well and a light. Alright, so we have these three things, and then let's add a render to output this. So on the render, I'm going to change the resolution, and I'm also going to change, I'm also going to add a null here and call this BG as always and turn a display on. And I'm also going to add a transform and a level here. So level first. Alright, so these are always these kind of free things I have at the end of my network. So on the transform, I'm going to change the alpha here to 1, say comp over background color, because I want that to be black. Alright, so let's now also add a null comp, because we want to have something for the camera to look at. So I'm always making this smaller so we can see it's not that important. We can now drag this in here, and now drag like change the Y of the camera a bit so we can already see this grid coming into view. And let's also just make this viewer active and put the light somewhere. So something like that maybe. We can still change that later, of course. Okay, so I'm going to turn the viewers off on all of these because we're not going to need them. The thing is, on the camera, no thing there. We're just going to get back to this. I'm going to add a phone material. Drag that on there, make that the material of our geo. Alright, so what we need to do now is to create a displacement map for this phone. Before I do that, I'm going to change the wireframe to topology wireframe, and then we can see this grid is now represented as lines here in our render. So perfect. I want to change the lines, or I want to change the lines color, so I'm going to change the diffuse to like this pink or like this violet, pink, whatever. I'm going to turn the specular down. We don't need that. Okay. Alright, so we need to create a color map, a normal map, and a height map. And yeah. So we're gonna use noise for these mountains that we had that I showed you. So I'm gonna create a noise, and before I do that, actually, let me show you something in the subs. So in the sub world, obviously we could also animate this. So we could technically just add a noise here, but if you have a look here at the FPS. That's dropping down to 20 on my PC, and if we just go down with the amplitude here, so this also works pretty nicely. Like this is kind of the same look, but yeah, even if I turn this viewer off, this is not changing. This is just going to 21 or 20, so that's pretty bad. The thing is, if we're working with displacement, the FPS doesn't really drop down. Alright, so just so you know that, we could also do that here, but this is a different approach now. Alright, so on the noise, I'm going to change the resolution to just 1024, and not change anything about these parameters for now. I'm going to add a null here, and add a null to this null, and then add a normal map and another null to this normal map. So I'm just gonna call this nothing for now. That's actually, I don't really care. We can use this as a color map. So now you can see this noise is coloring this grid, and we can also use this as a normal map. Now we're able to enable the height map, and now we can use this as a height map as well. Now we can turn on displace vertices, and there we go. Now we're already like getting there. Now what you can see here, this render is complaining. It says a map is normal mapping and so forth. So let's just go to the attribute create and turn the tangents on. Yeah, just the tangents. Alright, so now it's not complaining anymore. It's just what you need to do. Let's also change the line width a bit higher, so you can see it better for now. Alright, so now we can change the display scale to like 2 or 1, I don't know, something like that. We'll get to that. We'll get back to that in a second. Alright, so let's animate this now. So it's moving towards us. So to have this move towards us, we need to animate this to go downwards. So let's go to the translate y here and type abs time dot seconds times -1. That worked well. Seconds. Alright, so now as you can see, this landscape is moving towards us. Perfect. Yeah, great. So if I now go like down with the camera a bit, you can see, or if I turn this display scale up, you can see where sometimes we're moving through these mountains, which I don't like. Especially if we like change the midpoint here, then you can see, like, yeah, we're often moving through the mountains. So let's get rid of that problem by just adding a, like, just carving a way through this. So we're doing that by just kind of adding this rectangle. So I'm going to add a multiply here, and create, we could do this either with a ramp, but I like the way with a rectangle a bit more, the rectangle and blur. I'm going to show you why in a second. So I'm going to add a rectangle here, and let's just use the noises resolution. So I'm going to copy its parameter and pass it in here. And we're going to use, let's just go on. So I'm going to change this Y to 1 and change the size to like 0.1. I'm going to change the fill color to black and the background color to white, and change the alpha to 1. So we have like this sort of looking shape there. So now I can add this in here, and this is quite extreme, as you can see. This is really cutting quite the path in there. Also, one thing, just so we can see it better, on the light I want to change the dimmer to like 4, so it's just a lot brighter. And now we can actually also change the line width to 1 again. Alright, so to make this less extreme, we have 3 options, I think, or more, but like I'm going to show you 3. So once is you can just kind of decrease the size of this, and you can change the fill color by just dragging this up a bit to like a more of this grayish color. So now we still have like a bit of these mountains in there. And also I would suggest adding a blur to this, and just turning that up. So as you can see, if I change these parameters, we're just kind of changing the path, like the smoothness of the path. Alright, so that looks nice. Maybe you want to have this to be like 0.1, change the blur a bit higher, something like that. Cool, so that works well. So now let's actually, before we do some more stuff here on the displacement map, let's go to the camera, because I want to change a few things here. I want to go to the view and change this FOV angle to 120. So now we have like a much wider width, or like a view of what we can see. So this already looks a bit, quite a lot nicer. And also, as you can see there, quite far away at the end of the grid, you kind of have this weird movement, because that's the end of the grid, and that's just how it works. I guess I can't really explain why it's doing that, but it's doing that, and I want the viewer of this not to see that. So what I can do is go to the settings, and I just recently discovered this. I can't believe I never knew of this. So you can just turn on this fog to linear, change the fog color to black, and then move this to like maybe 15. So you can just kind of look where that annoying movement kind of is still visible. So 15 is a pretty good value, and then you can like move this up here, so we're like seeing further. So now it really looks like it's just kind of like this landscape is really like this infinite thing just kind of appearing there. So I like that more. Okay, so now what we can do, we might want to have this to kind of grow when it comes closer to us. So it looks more like, yeah, like it's getting bigger when it's getting closer to us. So what we can do to do that is, to achieve that, is dropping another multiply, and now using a ramp, and on this ramp I'm just gonna go to the comment page and pass the reference again, and then I'm gonna drop that in here. We need to now change the type to vertical, and we also need to switch these around. So I'm gonna make the left one white and the one in the back black, and I'm gonna add another one, make that white, and kind of just go further. So now, as you can see, these kind of seem to be growing when they get closer to you. I think I just like the effect of that. Kind of makes it more dynamic in a way. All right. One last thing in here is that you can use a level, and with this level you can increase like the gamma, for example, or you can increase the contrast, and it's just gonna kind of change the way these look. Also, what you can see here is that we have these black parts where there's completely where this goes to black and zero. So when we can change that by changing this to like 0.1, for example, and now it never really completely goes down. We always see this grid. So I like that. We can now also go to the noise and have some fun here and change the parameter, maybe make this higher and change the harmonics. So now we get like this different look. So then the higher you make the period, the faster this appears to be moving towards you. So you might want to like change this to like something smaller. You can also change the exponent here, which makes for some amazing effects, or in the other direction as well. Yeah, I'm actually going to increase the size of the rectangle to like 0.15 maybe. And increase the harmonics, something like this. Have some fun. Yeah. All right. So actually on the level, let's go down with the gamma a bit. Let's go down with this again as well, and we can change the fill color here to something higher. So like it doesn't go down as much. It's like 0.3 maybe, and now we can like also change the display scale to something higher if we wanted to, and then change the midpoint to something lower, so we're like closer to the ground. Cool, I think that looks pretty good. Let's now get to the part of the sun and the sky there in the background. All right, so I'm not gonna create another like any kind of geo or anything, so I'm gonna just create the sun as a top. So I'm going to create a circle, surprisingly, and I want to now use the render as the reference always. So I'm going to copy this parameter and pass it on the resolution here, and change the radius to like 0.3, like 0.25. I think is a good value. Yeah. All right. So now we can we're gonna multiply this quite a lot. So let's add a multiply here, and let's add a ramp here. I'm going to change this ramp type to vertical and also pass the reference on the resolution, and then add this in here. So now we have this gradient on the circle going on. All right, so that's the first multiplication. We're now going to add, I'm just going to copy paste this ramp here, and we're going to change the period down to like 0.05. So we have this sort of pattern here, and then I'm gonna add another multiply. I'm just gonna copy paste this and add that in here. So we're going with both ramps into the multiply, and I don't need to change anything here. We're just gonna add a fresh, or before I show you that, let's add another multiply. Just gonna copy paste that one again. Add that in here, add that one in here. Oops. And as you can see, we're kind of getting this, we're getting closer to what we want to achieve here. So All right. What I wanted this to be is like not have these smooth edges. I want this to be sharp lines. So I can just use a threshold. And yeah, as you can see, this already works pretty well. So I can like kind of go down with the threshold a bit, like yeah, maybe like 0.4. And so we have like a nice nice finish up there. We can kind of change where this white part is here. So I think, yeah, that looks pretty perfect. All right, so let's now add that in here with an over. I'm just gonna drop an over top in there and add this in here. And there we go. Kind of works pretty well. I can maybe add another ramp here, so it's just kind of going higher. Yeah, that works pretty nicely. Maybe even higher. So something like that. No, actually, let's do this. Let's do this another way. So, delete that again. And I'm going to. I want to do two things. One thing is that thing that I just tried to do, and I'm going to do that with a multiply here. And so I'm just going to add a ramp and a multiply, and I'm actually going to just copy and paste this one again, and add that in there now. And now add another like black one here and a white one here, and now I can like a bit better in control of that. Okay, and the second thing I want to do is add color here. So to do that, I'm going to use a lookup. So right now we just have grayscale values, and we can put like we can assign values to them, colors to them. So I'm going to add another ramp in here, and the lowest point I want that to have no alpha, so I want that to be transparent. And then we're going to add like a violet one here, quite a saturation, maybe another kind of, and yeah, no, and just a like an orange one up here. All right, so kind of looks like this, something like that. This could even be a bit more red. I don't know, something like this should work well. Yeah, another one in here. Yeah, I don't know. Play around, whatever fits best for your taste. Yeah, so we now have this nice gradient color. I'm gonna try to make this a bit darker. So something like that. Oh, that's good. Good enough. It's never good enough. All right, there we go. That looks more like it. All right, so now let's now get to the starry night sky there. So just called stars. So we're gonna use another noise for that. And this noise, I want also to have that, like you want that to have the same resolution again. And I'm gonna go down with the period to like 0.05, so we almost have like this completely random shape, like if you just change this to random. And I'm going to add a function here, and on this function I'm gonna change the RGB to input 1 times exponent, or whatever that sign is called. And I'm gonna like change this to like 15 or even 20. Whoops, it's not 20. There we go. Now I can change the exponent on the noise as well. And now we kind of have this night sky there. What we can do now is use an over again, and then just put that in there. All right, cool. So now we have stars in the background. Beautiful. It's three things about them. I don't want to have them all the way over the display. That's the first thing. So I'm going to use a transform to scoop it up a bit. So like maybe about 0.6, like 0.5, So they're just kind of starting there. And the other thing is that I want them to move. So I'm gonna go to the transform here and type abs time.seconds, and there. And now as you can see, they're kind of moving up. So maybe I want to change to 6.5, a bit slower. And the last thing here, I'm gonna add a level to just have them be a bit less bright. Have them be, I don't. Amazing English. Alright, so I'm just changing the opacity here to make them fade out a bit. Alright. One last thing for this is that I want more noise in this. So I'm gonna just copy paste this and change the type to random on this one. Add an add here and a level to this. So what I want to do is just add a bit of grain. So there we go, that looks amazing. Now let's just change the amplitude to like, I don't know, 0.2, and the level opacity to like 0.2 as well. And there we go. So if I just A/B this, we can kind of see this just looks a bit cooler. Alright. Actually, that wasn't the last thing. One last thing I want to show you is this resolution change. So I can just go to the render, and since I have always made these as a reference to this, I can now just change the resolution here to like 640 by 480, and now this really looks like vintage computer graphics, because it's just really bad resolution. You can go down maybe with the line width a bit if you wanted to, and also you might want to still be able to output this in a certain resolution, so you can just use a fit. And this fit I'm going to change to 1920 by 1080 now. I'm going to change the fit here to fit horizontal. We can also say fit outside. Doesn't make any difference in this case. So now you can change the resolution to be shitty and still output it at a good resolution in a way. Yeah, so if you want this to look completely retro, you can do that, or you can just change it back to HD. Alright, even looks better when the line width is down, I think. Okay, cool. I'm happy with that. So let's now get to the second part of the video. It's quite long. For the second part, I'm just gonna save this, and the second part, as you can see, kind of looks like this. So to do that, I'm just gonna delete that and copy and paste this. So we're just using the same technique, so it's not gonna take as long. Let's just dive in here. I wanna get rid of the sun, so I'm just gonna delete all of this. And I wanna have the stars in the grain, so I'm gonna leave the other things there, so like this post stuff. Alright, so let's go to the phone now and change this to off. So turn the wireframe off. Let's turn the blending on and change this to 1 minus source color, and let's also turn the depth test on off. Now we can like drag this down a bit, and let's also on the light. The light is alright. Let's also actually go here to the diffuse and change this to white. And what I want to do here is use the function trick that I just showed you as well. So I'm going to add a function, and now we can again select this input exponent thing and then drag this up. And maybe we want to even get rid of the level here, and I don't know, maybe even with that, whatever you feel like. I also don't want this to be so extreme, so I'm going to change this to 2. And I don't want this to have as much harmonics, so I'm going to change that down as well. Okay, so these kind of arrows that you can see there, if you increase this, the grid size, it kind of works a bit better, but it might also drop your FPS, but it actually is still working pretty well on my PC. Even though it's not the most amazing one. what we want to do now maybe is change the colors. So we could either use a lookup afterwards, but it's gonna have a bit of a different effect. I'm actually gonna add a lookup here and a null to that and a ramp to the lookup. Alright, now I'm gonna drag this on the color map instead, and now we can go to the ramp and start changing some colors here. So I can now change this to like a, yeah, to like this blue, add another kind of brighter blue, because I like blue, and kind of looks like ice, and maybe add some turquoise and some orange and some other colors. Alright, so I want this to be kind of bluish as well. Okay, and now feel free to play with this. I really like this, the way this looks. I don't really like this. Might want to change this to like 6. Yeah, you could also multiply this with a ramp to have like for the stars to have like kind of smoother transition there, and you have a lot of options. There's really a lot of things you can play with here. One thing I might want to show you here is using a limit. If you put a limit here and go to the quantize, change this to round, you kind of get these blocks because you're kind of adding steps to this. I'm gonna turn this down. It looks a bit like Minecraft now. So if you like that, you can play around with that. And obviously on the font there's quite a lot you can do. You can change this to like turn the parallax occlusion on, but it's gonna drop your FPS quite drastically, but it's also gonna look a bit better or more realistic. Yeah, so feel free to play with this as always. Okay, I think that's it. One thing I want to just tell you now is I'm working on a beginner course, like on a more or less full beginner course. I'm trying to include everything there that you need for as a starter. And so I'm working really hard on that. So if you want to have a pre-look before I release it to the public, you can become a patron and then look at that there. At the playlist, I'm kind of adding the videos there, and when it's done I'm gonna release it to everyone, so stay tuned for that. And generally I hope you're doing well in this weird time, and yeah, I'll see you on the next tutorial.